welcome to another Taoism lesson by me, Patrick. I'm the founder and chief editor of the Taoist Online, which is a community of writers, all volunteer, of course. We write over on the Taoist Online, the Taoist.online. You can find the link in the description when this is uploaded later after being recorded. Today is Sunday, October 15th. I took a week off to go camping last week, and that was fun. But I'm back. So now we're going to get started right where we left off. We are, if you're new, we are currently working through 365 Tao Daily Meditations by Deng Ming-Dao. Wonderful author. If you don't know what Taoism is a kind of an ancient Chinese philosophy religion. Started about 2,500 years ago. It was collected into a book called the Tao Te Ching. A very short and poetic philosophical way of living your life with the natural flow of nature, of existence. So every week, what we do here is I go through a handful of chapters and in this book, and we talk about it. So today is lesson number 6. We are on, as you can see to the left-hand side of your screen, we're on chapter 25. These chapters are pretty short. They're 365. You're supposed to do one chapter a day, but that's a long video to do 7. So here we are. We usually do about 4 or 5. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll be here for about an hour. So chapter 25, uselessness. I have a lot to say about this, but let's read it first. An ancient gnarled tree, too fibrous for a logger's saw, too twisted to fit a carpenter's square, outlasts the whole forest. Loggers delight in straight-grained, strong, fragrant wood. If the timber is too difficult to cut, too twisted to be made straight, too foul-odored for cabinets, and too spongy for firewood, it is left alone. Useful trees are cut down, useless ones survive. The same is true of people. The strong are conscripted, the beautiful are exploited. Those who are too plain to be noticed are the ones who survive. They are left alone and safe. But what if we ourselves are among such plain persons? Though others may neglect us, we should not think of ourselves as being without value. We must not accept the judgment of others as the measure of our own self-worth. Instead, we should live our lives in simplicity. Surely we will have flaws, but we must take stock in them according to our own judgment and then use them as a measure of self-improvement. Since we need not expend energy in putting on airs or maintaining a position, we are actually free to cultivate the best parts of our personalities. Thus, to be considered useless is not a reason for despair, but an opportunity. It is the chance to live without interference and to express one's own individuality. Yes. Okay, great. So let us go back. A great story I have been told, one of those Zen master stories, I guess. This monk was sitting around with his students, and the monk picked up a bowl and he handed it to one of his students. He said, "What is this?" And the student said, "It's a bowl." I said, "Okay." And he passed it to the next student. And the student said, he looked at it and he thought, "Oh, it's a hat." And he put the bowl on his head. The Zen master, and immediately the monk was enlightened, right? And good afternoon to you, Patty Murphy. So you can kind of see through this chapter and through the story I just told that useless and useful are just definitions of the world around us, of things. And then we define something as useful in a certain way, we define it as useless in other ways. But what is really useful and what is really useless? There's a great story in Zhuangzi about it, and it's alluded to here, of course, about a tree, a gnarled, knotted, smelly tree that, it can't be used for furniture, it can't be used for tools, it can't be used for, bowl making or whatever, or pot. It's just this nasty, ugly tree. And the man walking by, he was like, "Oh, what a useless tree." And the other man says, "Well, how could, it provides shade and I can sit, and it provides a home for animals and the birds and the trees." And, so kind of that one man's trash is another man's treasure. It's kind of the modern day twist on this story. But yeah, when you look at yourself, it's hard, or it's easy to remember that, or it's easy to think that you're useless sometimes, right? You see all these terrible things happening in the world, and even more since we've, since the 2 weeks I've been live. I mean, new war has broken out, and just terrible things are happening all over the place. And it's easy to kind of sit back and think, man, how useless am I? When you look at it from a defined point of view, can I affect the outcome of these conflicts? And the answer is no, of course. But can I affect those around me? Can I live a happier, less stressful life? And can I impart that to people who may need it? Absolutely. Well, so in one regard, you might be useless, but in another regard, you're very useful. So your self-worth is not inside these definitions of useful and useless. Your self-worth cannot be put into words, right? And that's really what this chapter is getting at. When you let go of a lot of the definitions and a lot of the ideas that society has put on you, then you are free to live your own life and to kind of find your own future. It's enlightening when you start to really kind of figure that out. And it's easy to say and it's easy to think about, but it's harder to put into practice, right? It's harder to, quit a job and say, well, this isn't right for me. Like, this is what somebody else wanted for me. And it's hard to, drop your degree plan in college because you've already spent $20,000 on a profession you aren't going to use. And, you'll be paying off student loans for the next 20 years on something you didn't even want to do to begin with. Yeah, it's a lot harder to put in practice, but you can do it. And you can find value in yourself and in things that you may think are useless, but in actuality, they are indeed very useful. All right. Chapter 26, Adoration. Images on the altar or imagined within. We pray to them, but do they answer? The wise tell us how important adoration is, so we kneel before altars, give offerings, and make sacrifices. In our meditations, we are taught to see gods within ourselves and to make supplications to receive power and knowledge. This we do with great sincerity, until the masters say that there are no gods. Then we are confused. The statue on the altar is mere wood and gold leaf, but our need to be reverent is real. The God within may be nothing but visualization, but our need for concentration is real. The attributes of heaven are utopian conjectures, but the essence of these parables is real. The gods, then, represent certain philosophies and extraordinary facets of the human mind. When we devote ourselves to gods, we establish communion with these deeper aspects. The thought that we are worshiping symbolism may make us uncomfortable. We are educated to accept only the tangible, the scientific, and the material. We doubt the efficacy of adoring the merely symbolic, and we are confused when such reverence brings about genuine personal transformation. But worship does affect our feelings and thoughts. When the wise say that there are no gods, they mean that the key to understanding all things is within ourselves. External worship is merely a means to point within the true source of salvation. Okay, let's talk about gods and religions. When we're young, we are taught that, well, at least I was, that God is a real person. And then you start to learn these traditions and these values. And then some people, as they grow older, you're told through the scientific community that there is no God. Well, do those traditions and values still hold meaning if that's not a real person? So what this is getting at to me is that the essence of that belief that keeps those traditions going is real. I think my brother told me once that, whatever you believe happens after you die, that's what's going to happen because it's your afterlife, right? The universe, you ever heard people say the universe revolves around you? Like, don't think the universe revolves around you, right? Like, you're not the center of the universe. Well, you kind of are, actually. You're the center of your universe because when you die, the universe ends from your perspective, right? So when you worship your God, that act of worship is valuable. It is pointing to your internal truth. And whatever is true to you, whatever you put value into, is helpful. So belief is not, believing without seeing is not a bad thing, right? It is not something that you should run away from. Belief in worshiping symbols or worshiping, Tao as a god or a force is still helpful, even if it's not a real person, because it's the internalization of those beliefs that cause the enlightenment, that cause you to progress and move forward in your ideas and thoughts and the way you treat others. So it's still valuable. That's what I take from it. It kind of gets to the point on the nose when it gets to the end. When the wise say there are no gods, they mean that the key to understanding all things is within ourselves, right? Like there doesn't need to be an actual God for you to reach that stage in yourself, because it's always been in you, right? That's what belief is. It's yourself. It's getting yourself to think and do and feel, and it's all internal, regardless of whatever is up there or down there or otherwise. All right, 27. Feasting is the flame in midwinter that kindles the fire of friendship and strengthens the community. In the past, feasting was a way to bind the community closer together. The same is true today. Whether there are cultural gatherings, times of group worship, or even special dinners with friends, We all need moments where we come together and reaffirm the importance of our group. The cheer that we feel is essential to both the collective and the individuals involved. The affirmation of the group should not be a sublimation of the individual, but rather a framework for involvement. A good gathering requires participation, the efforts of organization, work, and attendance, and in turn gives back sustenance for body and soul, a sense of belonging, and the accomplishment of something that could not be done by the individual alone. Like any other human endeavor, the feast is vulnerable to manipulation and politics, the self-maneuvering of cynical individuals. This is difficult to avoid completely, for it is impossible for any group to truly be united. The only way to mitigate this is for the collective to keep its intentions strictly on its purpose, to select its leaders wisely, and for those leaders to be as enlightened as possible. All right. So feasting, the gathering of communities and its purpose. Is that good? Right? Is that something we should do? Should we all just hang out in the woods and be alone and, sit there and meditate until we starve? Should we all be hermits? I mean, in this chapter, there are certainly negatives to coming together as a group, because no two people are ever exactly alike. No two people can ever really agree on anything completely 100%. So the political nature of gathering is unavoidable, whether that be for religious worship or spiritual worship or, just getting your family together for Thanksgiving. But in this chapter, it explains that it is still beneficial to do so, internally speaking. Especially as it says, a good gathering requires participation, the efforts of organization, and in turn gives back sustenance for body and soul, a sense of belonging, and the accomplishment of something that could not be done by the individual alone. That's your key. That's your key, right? Humans evolved for many, many, many millennia to be social creatures. We are animals that come together and live in family units by nature. So if we were to cut ourselves off from that, I believe you lose something about yourself, right? You lose a piece of who you are by isolating. Can you do it? Sure. Is it naturally done? Probably not. Not according to this. It certainly feeds your soul and your mind to collect and gather. However, it does end with a warning, right? The only way to mitigate this is for the collective to keep its intentions strictly on purpose, to select its leaders wisely, and for those leaders to be enlightened as possible. So when you gather, it is important to keep all this in mind, right? Tao Te Ching talks a lot about leadership and about government and how to rule, for it was written mostly for rulers. So it has a lot to say about your political ideologies and how people should be treated and left alone, but you should lead through example, and if you're doing your job correctly, then the people should believe that you didn't do anything at all, right? You should be very lightly touching everyone around you, right? Don't micromanage. So when it says as enlightened as possible, that's certainly a callback to all the lessons learned in the Tao Te Ching. So yeah, feasting. You ever, you know what it reminds me of? Reminds me of Thanksgiving, right? For all for all the Americans watching this, it is certainly painful to do the Thanksgiving with relatives who you may disagree with politically or socially. You have that really awkward uncle who like drinks all the time, or maybe they're like super mad. Something they turn on the news and they're like, right, and they're old. Um, it's it's tricky, and the older you get, the more you begin to see just how tricky of a situation that is. But there's still spiritual feasting. There's still love to gather there. There's still something to be prosperous about and joyous about. Yeah, that's my thoughts on feasting. Okay, let's go. If I can turn this page. There we go. Chapter 28. Accountability. A father without a father has difficulty balancing. A master without a master is dangerous. We look up to our parents, our teachers, and our leaders with trust and expectation. But their responsibility is to guide us, educate us, and even make judgments on our behalf when circumstances are uncertain. Ultimately, they are to bring us to the point where we can make our own decisions based on the wisdom that they have helped us develop. But the potential for abuse and mistakes is very great. What person can be right all the time? A simple lapse in the wrong time can cause confusion, psychological scars, and even great disaster. Harsh words during a child's impressionable moments can engender years of problems. That is why we need a parent for the parent, a master for the master, and leaders for the leaders. This prevents errors of power. In the past, even kings had wise advisors. Every person who would be a leader should have such assistants. Eventually, someone has to be at the top. And who will that person turn to? Let us invoke not deities, but pragmatism. It is experience that is the ultimate teacher. That is why wise people travel constantly and test themselves against the flux of circumstance. It is only in this way can they truly confirm their thoughts and compensate for their shortcomings. More on leadership, more on travel. Recently I am trying to gain a teacher, and it's been ongoing. But it's important that even if you sat there and read every book in the world about whatever subject it was, even if you thought that you knew everything about religion or Taoism specifically, you still wouldn't, because there's a lot to life you can't learn unless you go live it, right? If you haven't gotten a chance to travel out of the country you live in, I highly recommend you do. Just looking at other cultures and seeing the differences between yourself and them will greatly impact your world stance, your viewpoint. I mean, look at the way you treat your parents, right? I mean, look at your parents, isn't it? When you're a kid and you're like, I don't understand my parents sometimes. Like, I just don't get that. Like, what does that mean? Right? Like, are they just weird? Am I broken? Like, are we ever going to agree on something? And you don't, right? I'm 40 years old and I still don't get my mom. I still don't understand some of the things she believes and thinks. But that's not to say that they're bad, or that they're wrong, or I'm wrong, or I'm bad. It's our experiences that we have to live through that change and shape who we are. And since no two experiences are the same, then we're not going to believe, or we're not going to believe the same. We're not going to see even the exact same situation. We won't view it the same. So when it comes to the people you trust and the people in your decisions, it's important to remember that. For example, your political leader. Let's say someone ran for president of the United States who was barely old enough to run, just 35. They had never led a team before. They had never done anything, right? They just sat in their house all day for 30 years and ran for president. It's probably not going to be a great leader because they just don't have the experience to take on that responsibility. And the advice they give, even if it sounds like concrete truth, is not going to be like, you shouldn't take that as gospel because you know they don't have the life experiences to give advice on that topic. So too should we think about ourselves and our friends and our decisions, right? When you make a decision on something impactful, where did that decision come from? Why did you think that? Like, your knee-jerk reaction can be misleading sometimes. It's not that you shouldn't be spontaneous sometimes, but it is beneficial to maybe not be spontaneous 100% of the time. Every wise person has been taught by another wise person. Every parent has been taught by a parent at some, maybe not at the exact same time. And every child's been taught by a child, right? Parents were children and they grow up and they have children and they use their experiences to pass that knowledge on. At some point, we keep living. At some point, we're all here. In chat, it says, I kind of love that thing. You're not going to learn everything about Taoism unless you're out there living your life. And even when you won't understand it all, but what's important is to live well. Yes. Yes, indeed. Live life well. I have a emoji covering up the text. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you have to live your life. You have to get out there and go on and see what's there. And if you're not, are your decisions really good decisions? Are they really thoughtful? There are some things you can't control, right? Life is life. Life is random a lot of times. But there are other things you can control, and knowing which is which, that's a big skill to learn. That's a big task. It's a tall order, as they say. But yeah, accountability, holding each other accountable, right? Having that person there to ask questions about, especially when it comes to something like Taoism, is so important, right? When it comes to your religious beliefs, your philosophical and spiritual lives, having anyone, whether it's online or in person, or on a phone call, or just watching YouTube videos, like having someone there to learn from, I think you'll be surprised. Like, you'll really, really be surprised in a good way, in a happy way. All right. 29. Scars. Markings in dry clay disappear only when the clay is soft again. Scars upon the self disappear only when one becomes soft within. Throughout our life, but especially during our youth, many scars are inflicted upon us. Some of them are the results of violence, abuse, rape, or warfare. Others arise from bad education. A few come from humiliation and failure. Others are caused by our own misadventures. Unless we recover from these injuries, our scars mar us forever. Classical scriptures urge us to withdraw from our own lusts and sins. But scan that can have happened through no fault of our own may also bar us from spiritual success. Unfortunately, it is often easier to give up a bad habit than to recover from the incisions of others' violence. The only way is through self-cultivation. Doctors and priests can only do so much. The true course of healing is up to us alone. To do this, we must acquire many methods, travel widely, struggle to overcome our personal phobias, and perhaps most importantly of all, try to acquire a few new problems as possible. Unless we do, each one of them will bar us from true communion with Tao. This reminds me of monks. The classical, maybe the stereotypical idea of monks, anyway, where you just shut yourself off from everything. And anything that's bad, you just don't want to happen to you. Anything that makes you unhappy, you just would rather avoid. Don't be sad. Don't be mad. Don't be scared. Just try to avoid all these very natural emotions all the time forever. And you can just be happy all the time. Or you can turn yourself into a robot and just don't have feelings, right? Like that should be your goal, is to be like a Vulcan on Star Trek. But this would teach us that that's not the case, right? Those failures happen regardless. And especially when you're young, you can't stop those. They're just a natural part of existing. And a lot of your healing from those scars needs to come from within. And it even says doctors and priests can only do so much. The true course of healing is up to us alone. Well, how do we do that? How do we heal ourselves? And then it just tells us, to do this, we must acquire many methods, travel widely, which is what we just talked about, right, in the previous chapter. You can't learn from just sitting there and reading. You must go out into the world to learn. And if we do, when we struggle, when we confront our phobias, then we elevate ourselves. Then we learn, we rise above, we overcome. It's difficult, right? If we don't attempt to, we'll never live in harmony with the Tao. Think of it as having the wool pulled over your eyes. I mean, I guess you could live your whole life like that, right? And just cover up yourself and then just hope you don't run into anything. But you could pull the trauma you have away and deal with it. And then your eyes will be much more open. Your life will flow a little bit more naturally. You'll have less stress, less strife, less struggle, less all the S's, all the bad S words. We'll have less of those. And that's what the goal is, right? The ultimate goal is to live your life in the flow of Tao, move in harmony with Tao. All right. Lovemaking. Chapter 30. Should be an interesting one. I haven't read this one yet, but let's see what happens. Nocturnal downpour wakes the lovers, floods the valley. Making love is natural. Why be ashamed of it? That seems simple, but it is actually a great challenge in these complex times. Too many other layers of meaning have been imposed upon sex. Religions straitjacket it. Aesthetics deny it. Romantics glorify it. Intellectuals theorize about it. Obsessives pervert it. These actions have nothing to do with lovemaking. They come from fanaticism and compulsive behavior. We can actually master the challenge of having lovemaking be open and healthy. Sex should not be used as leverage, manipulation, selfishness, or abuse. It should not be a ground for our personal compulsions or delusions. Sexuality is an honest reflection of our innermost personalities, and we should ensure that its expression is healthy. Making love is something mysterious, sacred, and often the most profound interaction between people. Whether what is created is a relationship of pregnancy, the legacy of both partners will be inherent in their creation. What we put into love determines what we get out of it. Indeed. I love these. I love this book. This book is fascinating. Okay. What can I say about this? Let's look at it from the religious standpoint first. I think, growing up Southern Baptist, it was very obvious what the do's and don'ts were supposed to be, right? Marriage only. But I think as we grew up, you realize that maybe that's not the case, right? Maybe that's not what you want for your life. I had a pastor when I was in my 20s say that it was very natural, right? I mean, it's supposed to feel good. I mean, that's how your bodies work. So to teach us that is somehow like wrong doesn't make a lot of sense for me. Like, how can something that feels so good and be so natural be wrong? Because it's not. Because it's not wrong. According to, in this Taoist kind of sense, it is an honest honest self-reflection of our innermost personalities, and we should ensure that its expression is healthy, right? If you're in a relationship with someone and both of you agree that it's healthy and a happy thing, then that is a happy and healthy thing. It is up to the both of you to determine that. It gets used for manipulation. I mean, just turn on the radio and see how much, our sexualities are used for just everything. Sell products and elect political leaders and, sell baked goods apparently and license it, and just, I mean, it's crazy. Like, it's everywhere. And you can't turn it off. Even if you go into Middle Eastern countries, right? Women have to be completely covered and they can't use the same doors. And so even when you try to shut it out as much as possible, it's still there. It's always going to be there. No matter what you are going to do, it's always going to be there. So trying to ignore it or control it to some degree is just never going to happen, right? You're never going to rid yourself of those feelings. You're never going to rid society of that desire. I think it was in the book Brave New World where it's a utopian society right? A futuristic, science fiction book, where they just let kids just do it from an early age, like just to kind of get it out of their system, right? And instead of, telling children it's bad, they just put them all into a place together and let them all figure it out. And I always found that really fascinating. That kind of crazy extreme scenario in that book. It's so different from what we do, which is where you have to be clothed and you have to all the rules of society and touching and what if we didn't have those rules, right? Like what if we used them for our for the benefit of each other and for others rather than control and manipulate and try and prosper off of those rules? I don't know what would happen, but would it be any different? Maybe. Would it be any better? I don't know. But yeah, it is. It's very natural. It's not something to be ashamed of. Everybody thinks the same. We all have it built into our DNA. Not going to go anywhere. So even as you get older, let me add that. Even at 40 years old, it's still the same. It's never going to go anywhere. All right, one more. Orientation. Planets orbit the sun. Forms orbit the mind. Most of us embody desperate aspects in our personalities. These are our forms, the way we take shape. If we aren't careful, we can become confused by such complexity. We should not deny any part of ourselves. We should arrange them. All elements are valid. They must simply be placed in the right context. Those who follow Tao understand that a diverse personality is problematic only if some aspects dominate to the exclusion of others. This is unbalanced. If there is constant alteration between all aspects, then equilibrium is possible. Like the planets, feelings, instincts, and emotions must be kept in a constantly rotating order. Then all things have their place and the problems of excess are avoided. Just as the sun is at the center of our solar system, so too must the mind of wisdom be the center of our diverse personalities. If our minds are strong, then the various parts of our lives will be held firmly to their proper courses, and there will be no chance of deviation. So, all things in moderation is essentially what I get from this, even in your emotional state, right? And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where you can't just be happy all the time, right? And I think that's what we're taught. We're taught that that certain emotions are negative and harmful and bad, and that other emotions are good. And you should be good and have these happy emotions all the time. And if you live your life correctly and you do certain things and you do them in certain orders, then you can just be constantly ride that high. But what's important to remember is that that's not the case. You can't be just happy all the time, ever, right? I don't have a symbol on. I don't have a. Let's see if I can pull this here. You guys see that? The yin yang right there. Yeah. So the yin yang, most of the time, is shown as a static, non-moving symbol. But what it really should do is this and turn, right? That is the true example of nature. All things in turn, all things having a time and a place and an order. And only then can we have a balanced existence. And here, we go to page 2. It says, feelings, instincts, and emotions must be kept in constantly rotating order. Then all things have their place, and the problems of excess are avoided. So what problems? What problems of excess? What are they talking about? Well, problems like depression, problems like anxiety, problems like making bad mistakes, especially when if you're happy all the time, then you don't see what's coming. Like, it's too spontaneous, right? You're just running around with like a chicken with its head cut off, right? Just kind of running around doing all kinds of things. You can get hurt. You can hurt other people just by being happy all the time, because you can't see forward, right? You're not stopping and slowing down. But when you stop and slow down, sometimes that can make you sad when you think about things, make you depressed and anxious. So what are you supposed to do, right? You can't be happy all the time, and you can't be sad and depressed all the time either. It has to turn, right? The balance of all things needs to move and change form and shape, just like the yin yang here on my keycap. Yeah, the wisdom is in the center. Find your center. That's what I get told a lot on my writings. In fact, I had someone the other day tell me about it. Find the center. Don't allow yourself to always be one or the other. As emotions come, learn to let them go, especially the negative emotions, especially things like anger and sadness, and loneliness, right? Those have their place, and those are natural, and we feel those. They're a part of us. They're who we are. But the skill and the experience that you need is letting those emotions pass. And it's hard. It's not easy. Maybe one of the hardest things about living is getting over when bad things happen. When you're sad, like, how do you become unsad? You can't take back what happened. You can't, if someone passes away, you can't undo that, but you have to keep going, right? You have to work on it and think about it and become who you are again. And that constant change and that constant flow of creation and destruction and more creation and more destruction, that connection there, that's what it is. That's Tao, right? That's where you'll find it. That's where you will find your center and true wisdom. All right. Well, guys, we're going to wrap it up. If you're watching this after it was live, we do stream this live every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Central Time. We do have a community. The TaoistOnline.org is our homepage. If you want to come and chat with us, we have a Discord community where we all spend time and we chat and we share ideas. We have a question of the day, or we talk about philosophy, or maybe just health stuff, or maybe just what's happened. We have a channel just for venting when things go bad. It's called Let It Go, where we just talk about what happened and we try and support each other. We publish about 20 articles a day on a website named Medium, which you can find on the TaoistOnline.org, or you can go directly to the articles, which is the Taoist.online, and just read all of our free articles. We have several free ones, and then we have some that you have to pay Medium for and be a member. But it's only $5 a month, so that's great. It's cheap. Okay, well, cool. If you want to help support me or support the organization, there's a coffee link down there at the bottom of your screen. You can use that, and we use it to pay the writing staff and give them tips every month. Cool. We also do writing contests. and your donations will go directly to those writing contest winners too. We're in the middle of a writing contest right now, actually. So if you would like to participate, sign up for a medium.com account and then head over to TaoistOnline.org, jump in our chat, and learn how to apply. All right, cool. Well, thank you guys. I will see you next week, and I'll have this video edited and uploaded hopefully in the next few days. All right, thanks. Bye.